Hey everyone, welcome. If you saw the original recording for WrestleMania 4, I'll try to give you some more content as to make it worth your while to stay and listen to me explain this tremendous card. And while it's still the era of Hulkamania, another man would be on his way to becoming the face of the Federation after this pay-per-view. And we started off with a pretty cool matchup. Two stars of the 80s for sure. JYD, who would come in from Mid-South. He's been on WWF since I started this simulation nearly 3 in-game years ago, as well as Paul Orndorff, who was a key instrument in putting over the huge faces that WWF currently has in my simulation. I believe it was JYD and Orndorff's first time locking horns on pay-per-view, and surprisingly, yes, on the pre-show. Certainly deserving of being on the pre-show. However, I just could not make room to get them on, as I was already kind of struggling to getting a lot of top talent on this pay-per-view. So they made the card. Unfortunately, it was on the pre-show, and the same can be said for Adrian Adonis and Jerry Lawler. Now, my thinking going into this match was, if you've seen some of the posts that I've put on Reddit, obviously I've had a huge feud going on between Adrian Adonis and Lawler that almost kind of seemed to have culminated with a loser leaves town match. However, Lawler would come in, wrestle Adonis in an unsanctioned match, which had to be on Superstars instead of a pay-per-view, and won that match, and was eventually reinstated by the commissioner. Now, the way that our current pay-per-views are set up, and this is going to take effort on my behalf to basically wipe out the super card slots and put in my own pay-per-views, which would be the only way in which I can get Lawler to be able to have feuds on a semi-regular basis. Otherwise, I'm only going to have to build up to WrestleManias, Survivor Series, Royal Rumbles, and SummerSlams, and maybe King of the Ring if that's on a Sunday as well, due to his current obligations with other promotions. I think he's currently on 4 different rosters, and the problem is, if you've played in the 80s and maybe even mid-90s with Lawler, is that Jerry Jarrett and his promotion has Lawler, I think, in the booking position. So it's nearly impossible, in fact, I would say impossible, to try to lure him away from that promotion and sign him full-time. Now, Adonis, he's definitely a top heel in that he can put on 90s as far as performance. Just didn't have a hot feud going into this WrestleMania, and he's definitely someone that I'm going to have to better utilize moving forward from this point on. But now on to the main card, and we're going to start it off hot and heavy as we show Savage and DiBiase their highlights. Definitely a match that has main evented actually King of the Ring 86, as both competitors were on their way up and they have continued to climb up until this point. Both former King of the Ring winners, DiBiase would defeat Randy Savage in 86, and Savage would defeat Curt Hennig in 87, making them my two choices so far for King of the Ring. The only two that I've been able to book as Kings of the Rings, and certainly an indication of the faith that I had in them as they main event this WrestleMania card. And the first match, the opening match of the card, would be a 4-way elimination tag between the Bulldogs, the Brainbusters, the Hart Foundation, and the newly formed Fabulous Freebirds, Michael P.S. Hayes and Jimmy Jam Garvin, longtime tag members in WCCW, made the jump near the beginning of my simulation. However, Jimmy Jam came in as a face and Michael P.S. Hayes as a heel, and I had them both debut without knowing this. And it was probably about a year and a half ago. However, the computer just kept saying, like, you shouldn't turn Jimmy Jam yet, and it's not advised to turn Michael P.S. Hayes. But I finally just pulled the trigger. I said, look, it's now or never. I really haven't utilized them as single competitors, so formed them, and now they're already making a splash. Even in defeat, they were on the main card of WrestleMania, so hopefully that raises their exposure. And if you saw the first video, which did have the advantage of showing the performance actually of the competitors of each match, I believe that Jimmy Jam was actually the lowest performance rating. I could be wrong on that, but I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. Hart Foundation and the Brainbusters are both Dynamite, and Dynamite and Davey are former WWF champions. They're a terrific tag team and will be taking on the winner of the tag title championship match. But before that match, we are going to have our women's champion Bull Nakano going up against Chigusa Nagao for the women's title, and Bull Nakano stays undefeated in a victory over Nagao for the title. And you know, some of the women that I picked up for the newly formed winning women's division, or reformed women's division rather, are highly touted by the creative. So, you know, definitely a division that's gonna hopefully really just continue to build and build and build, and obviously it's a slow build, trying to just build up the main players as I'm able to bolster the roster with bigger names. So far, Bull and Nagao are among the top two names. Jaguar Yagoto, I believe, is another, and Medusa is also among the name of superstars who are going to bolster that roster and hopefully start the women's revolution decades before Stephanie McMahon is able to pull it off. But before we get to that, another McMahon is going to announce the inaugural Money in the Bank match decades early. If we can't get the women's evolution first, well, damn it, we're going to go for the first Money in the Bank ladder match, and that is directly after the announcement. And there had been weeks of promotion as competitors like Magnum, Stan Hansen, and Curt Hennig fought their way to be in this match, and Rick Rude, Tito Santana, and Misawa were competitors who were seen as worthy of being thrown into this bout. And for lack of a better explanation, Hennig had to be on this card. Rick Rude was a guy that I was trying to build up, bolster. If you've seen some of the stuff I was doing, he was hindered, at least for a short while, by drug problems, a soft drug problem, which definitely hurt him, as he was someone who, when I picked him up early, about 3 years ago, I was definitely looking to build him up immediately, give him title matches and such, and perhaps title victories if he could, gain momentum the way that some of my young superstars have been able to. But unfortunately, sending him to rehab multiple times has hurt his popularity. However, I'm not giving up on him. Expect a resurgence for him. Tito Santana, another understated performer. He puts on very consistent matches. He's definitely a workhorse. He's someone that I regularly highlight on episodes of Superstar. He gets a lot of co-main event or main event matches. Sometimes putting guys over, but nonetheless his popularity has stayed fairly steady. He has good momentum and constantly someone who you could just insert into the main event need be, and he would not be out of place. Hansen, on the other hand, he's had good build in the tag division, yet on his own hasn't quite been able to make the next big step. Whether that's because he hasn't been put over by the right people, could be the reason. I mean, he had a feud with Hogan, but obviously had to put Hulk Hogan over. No surprise there. So he's someone who, should be near the top. He certainly has the stats to be a mainstay in the main event. However, popularity just doesn't match what he can pull off in the ring. Magnum, on the other hand, definitely an overachiever. One of the guys who came in and was instantly main event ready. He's already got 80 performance, he's already churning out 80s as far as performance. He's over with the crowd, and definitely a guy who's going to make a run at the titles in WWF. And to close out the 6 men who were in the inaugural Money in the Bank, Misawa, who is considered the most well-rounded and best overall workers. He regularly wins that award, and you'll see that he's super well-rounded, and probably to people who are his fans, no surprise to you guys, but to other people, he is entertainment-wise and on the mic fantastic. That's why he is so well-rounded. So he's definitely someone who's certainly going to be getting a push at some point. I just need to slowly bolster his popularity, and eventually you're going to see him be put over by mainstays on this WWF roster. But Curt Hennig gets the big push coming out of this matchup, and he will have the briefcase, and I can't imagine a better competitor to get the briefcase, perhaps, other than Ted DiBiase himself. But look for a creative way to see that briefcase come to fruition. But before we get to that point, the tag titles were up for grabs as Demolition took on and defeated the Road Warriors. And definitely a big matchup that resonates in many child's memory of wrestling, tag wrestling at least, and it comes down to the debate of, who came first, Demolition or the Road Warriors, and many WWF fans were fully convinced that Demolition created the gimmick and actually was the crux of their initial battles, tag battles, dating back probably over a year when I first got Demolition and the Road Warriors on the WWF roster, and Demolition accused the Road Warriors of stealing their gimmick, and it led to Bulldog, or rather dog collar matches, and that being the blow-off, and I believe the Road Warriors would take that match home, but now Demolition has turned the corner as one of the premier tag teams in the WWF tag division. And another member who had dominated in the tag division just prior to Demolition's tag title victory was Vader and Hansen, who I mentioned earlier, but Corny, the manager for Vader, is putting him over. He's hyping up this matchup between two of the blossoming rising stars in the WWF, Vader and Sting, and they would meet in this matchup in a steel cage match, and Sting went over Vader in that match, and I've got to say, Sting, perhaps Sting, Vader, and Misawa, no doubt, three young stars that are super promising and will, lead WWF into the future without a shadow of a doubt. Sting is so athletically gifted, stat-wise, on the roster, and his psychology is there to match, and they're going to be getting huge pushes in the future, so watch out for that. And even though this seems to be a good place to blow this feud off, I'm not sure if we have seen the last of Vader and Sting, so definitely something to look out for as well. Then Hogan, in a promo, says he's putting it all on the line. Career versus career. Bobby Heenan goaded him into it, and the feud that has lasted over a year will finish here tonight on WrestleMania 4. Hogan got the big main event victory for the title at WrestleMania 3, and now at WrestleMania 4 defeats Andre to end his illustrious career. If you saw the other video that I had posted prior, that's in the archives, you would see Andre actually picked up a victory coming out of that match. And, good timing for an injury, honestly, if you're getting retired. And Hogan, apropos to be the man to do it, he puts Hogan over one last time. So finally, that chapter of the book ends, and Hogan will be on to maybe not bigger feuds, but definitely better feuds, as Andre was starting to deteriorate. His performance had dropped below an 80, and while, I could have found ways to use him further until he was completely void of utility, I thought, at least have him go out somewhat on top. And I couldn't think of a better opponent than Hogan to be the one to see him take a step out the door. And he will be missed, but it was definitely his time to go, before he really started to plummet. And he had a good year there for sure. He had won the WWF title going into WrestleMania 3 and had a tremendous, legendary feud with Hulk Hogan. Then, following this match, Piper, who would also be a star to have main evented against Hulk Hogan in my simulation, cuts a promo. He thinks he's the best IC champion, and he doesn't foresee him losing it anytime soon. Well, he definitely doesn't have ESP, as Jake the Snake Roberts, one of our marquee baby faces and perennial main eventers, takes home the title in a victory over Roddy Piper in a tremendous matchup that got a 96 rating. And I had no doubt. I mean, for years, these two guys have been at the top of the card, if not, or near the top, if not at the top. They had feuded for Roddy Piper's then WWF Heavyweight title, and Jake was unable to win it, and finally is able to defeat Roddy Piper when it counts, and he will be wearing that IC strap with pride moving forward, and the illustrious reign of Rowdy Piper comes to an end. It'll be interesting to see where he goes moving forward. And next, Harley Race, who is facing Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for his #1 contendership in the co-main event. And in a pre-match interview with Mean Gene, finds out that the match is actually going to be a 30-minute Iron Man match. And he was shocked, bewildered, and befuddled learning that stipulation. And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, definitely one to have the stamina to go 30 minutes, if not double that or triple that. Was definitely hearing music to his ears, but unfortunately was unable to pull out the victory over Harley Race, making him the current #1 contenders for the World Heavyweight title. And that victory would come due to help from Greg the Hammer Valentine, rather. He would insert himself in that match and cost Steamboat the victory, making Harley Race the man who is going to be looking for the heavyweight title, who was on, or what was on the line in the main event. And another hype package for that main event. This is a crowning achievement for these two young rising stars, and they're not so much rising stars, but yet to really get that push over the top that saw Hogan, ascend into being a household name and legend. Well, this is their chance, and they really knocked it out of the park, as Savage finally is crowned the WWF World Heavyweight Champion over Ted DiBiase. Savage had won the IC title, the King of the Ring. Hasn't won the tag titles yet, but I certainly wouldn't, say it's out of the realm of possibility. Who knows, him and Hogan could form the mega powers once more to become the tag champs. But for now, he is going to be a focused WWF World Heavyweight Champion. He was a guy that I wanted to slow build and also wanted to crown in a similar fashion. Now, obviously, there was no tournament. DiBiase came in the champion. He had a fairly long reign that lasted, I want to say, from Survivor Series until now, so nearly 6 month reign. Definitely, nothing to be ashamed of. It was a great reign for DiBiase, but Savage just had his number here tonight, and he will be pushing the WWF into a new era. A very exciting prospect, and Harley Race will be his first challenger, and that is certainly a tough matchup right off the bat. And I gotta say, I couldn't be happier with this main event. I really thought that it would be, a candidate to get the first at least 100 that I've had on a pay-per-view. I've yet to have a 100. And after I saw the two main events for the last two matches, I thought, oh man, I might have done it. What I think honestly probably soured it from being a 100, adding Mean Gene to this segment and then doubling up on hype for the main event. You live and you learn. A 97 is definitely nothing to shoo away. but was definitely looking for a huge rating and got it. All the big stars put on, and I think it advanced the roster enough to where we're in a very good position to have Savage have a worthwhile, meaningful title reign, as well as set up the IC title for some interesting matchups as well. We put over two guys in meaningful ways, Jake Roberts and Randy Savage. They made that next step that they definitely needed going into the late 80s. And it was a monumental pay-per-view, a meaningful pay-per-view, and definitely a huge step towards getting my roster where it needs to be to get the guys over that I want to get over and tell the complete story that I want to tell. I hope you enjoyed it. Expect new content like this in the future. If you have any comments, please drop them down below, and like and subscribe the video. I appreciate you checking it out. Have a great night.